vocation, God's call upon our lives, are really well linked. Another word for harvest is thanksgiving. We have this in Welsh. The word for harvest in Welsh is diolchgarwch, which is thanks rooted in love. At harvest time, we thank God for all the gifts of creation. And when we think about the harvest, the things that we can give back to God and the things that we share with one another, we have so much to be thankful for. There's a beautiful prayer in the Ignatian tradition called the Examen that begins with a list of thanksgiving, thanking God for all the goodness, all the enriching experiences in our lives. So harvest and vocation celebrate what we have, all that's good, all that's fruitful, all that gives life, all that's a sign of God's creativity. Harvest and vocation are perhaps also about recognising who we are, children made in the image of God our Creator, people who are made in God's image, therefore people who are meant to be creative, people who God made good, people who are called to be a sign of God's blessing. When we think about our vocation, we might think about who we are and whom we serve and how we use all the gifts that God has given to us. One of the stories that's frequently told at harvest tells about a mistake we often make with our gifts and with all that God made for us. There's that story about a farmer who had a bumper harvest and said to themselves, what shall I do with all my crops? I know, I'll build bigger barns. I'll save them all up so that I can say to my soul, rejoice, relax, be merry. And God says to that farmer, you fool. God says to that farmer, your possessions are possessing you. You're living in a wrong relationship to the material good of this earth. And in the story about that farmer, his life is taken away. And the question is, what good are the material things of this earth in contrast to the eternal gifts that God gives us? The folly of our times is we think that we should save up for ourselves all that's good. And sometimes we do that with our vocations. Sometimes we keep our gifts too tightly held close to us, and we're not willing to do what harvest most truly calls us to do. At the baptism that we have at the beginning of our Christian life, there's a beautiful prayer. A prayer that calls us to shine as a light in God's world. At harvest time, we think about the scandal of all the riches there are on God's earth and how poorly we share them. And we might look at our world today and see there is a crying need to share out the gifts that God has given us. We live in a world where, although we know we are materially wealthy, people are still starving. And we might look at the world and see there is a spiritual hunger. People are hungry and thirsty for words and deeds of comfort and hope, to hear the gospel, to hear the good news. At harvest time, we might think about the gifts that God has given us. We might think about how we can share them better and how we might fulfill our calling. And harvest reminds us we're never alone in doing this. We join the great company of all God's saints throughout the ages, those who've gone before us and those who will follow us. The harvest of God's world is a community of people, and we enter this harvest joyfully when we offer ourselves generously